Hey, hey, great to see everybody. I can barely see, but it's great to see everybody here. It is a wonderful day. We've got a Republican president. We've got a Republican. Listen, everybody's got problems. Everybody has issues in your life. Life deals us some things that we don't always wish would happen. But I got to tell you, every day I wake up. I love my Lord. I love my country. God bless America. We got a Republican in the White House and not who we were going to have, right? This is good. This is good. So we're going to just talk about a few things here for a few minutes. The curtain has been pulled back for America. And you folks in the room have known this probably your whole lives, as long as you've been involved, for sure. Let me back up a little bit. The PLC. Thank you very much for this forum. The folks that are in it, guys like Dave Taylor. Look, we got to lament this stuff to each other, right? Because we got to check each other, and this is the forum to do it. So thank you very much for the opportunity. But the curtain has been pulled back for America. Finally, America sees what we have seen our whole lives, what we've watched, right? The liberals and the liberal agenda. And I don't say Democrats, because I go to church with a lot of folks that are old world Democrats that are much more conservative than some of the Republicans I know. They're good people, right? But the liberals and the liberal agenda and the connection with our media, the curtain has been pulled back, and people are seeing this new source of information, and information flow and communication has made a huge difference for the country and for us. And they're seeing, people are seeing. And of course, we got to continue to point it out. Hey, David, this agenda and their intolerance. Isn't it fascinating? We might disagree, right? We might think that you should do this way, or our country should do this that way. And so we might disagree, but we don't say you should shut up if you don't agree with our position. That is their position, right? And people have started to see that is not their new position. That has always been their position, and we have lamented it our whole existence. Their intolerance for people who refuse to agree and comply with them. The tactics they've used, the Saul-Alinsky tactics. We don't discuss policy anymore in debates, right? If you look at Mitt Romney and Barack Obama, well, if you look at the last presidential election, school districts, they like to play debates because the government classes, they want to show those to their students, and they don't. Students now are used to kind of the last series of debates over the last couple of years. And if you go back to the Romney-Obama debates, and students are like, well, that's boring. Well, they were discussing policy, not you're a bigot, not you're a racist, not you hate women, not all those things. But that's what we've devolved to, because that's the last bastion of where the liberals are. They can't discuss policy. It's the curtain's been torn back, and we all see what the policy is, and they can't discuss it and win votes. We can talk about that a little further too. Their version of America is on display for everyone to see. Now, we have to do a good job, and sometimes we don't, I hate to say capitalize on, but we have to show people. People are living their lives. They are busy. They are struggling. They have the same problems that we do, and they don't have time to know all these things. And I will tell you this too. We count on our schools. We always have. We think to ourselves, well, I went to school. I learned about, I'm sure I have it, the Constitution in school. I learned about these things that are important in government class and social studies. And so we're thinking, well, I'm at work now, and my child's at school, and I'm sure they're learning about all the things that I learned about. They aren't. So when you go to talk to them, I talked to a group of college students a couple nights ago, and some of them older college students, and we had a discussion about things that are important to them. I just let them to ask questions, and I was amazed at what they didn't know. I passed this out to every one of them before the class. Right. And they said, well, what are you doing about? I'll just tell you an anecdote. The one lady said to me, and she's a lady who served in uniform, and she is probably, I don't know how old she was. I assume she's not as old as I am, but she wasn't 18 either. And she said, what are you doing about guns? And so we had a kind of a conversation about what the federal role is about guns and, of course, school violence and so on and so forth. And she wanted to get into universal background checks. And I said, well, okay, let's talk about that a little bit. And I said, what is your concern with universal background checks in the context of this conversation? She said, they're getting these guns at the gun shows, and they're going to shoot the school. That's what they do. And I said, are you aware that none of these school shootings over the past 20 years, none of the guns used were bought at a gun show without a universal background check. Are you aware of that fact? Well, she said, no, I'm not. And she said, but can't you just get rid of the gun? I said, which one? She said, well, these assault rifles. I said, well, we can talk about the terminology of assault-styled weapons. But I said, there was a shooting a couple days ago. There was a murderer, a would-be murderer at one of these tech companies, YouTube, I think it was. I said, didn't use the assault weapon, used a pistol. So which gun? Well, she said, all of them. And I said, but what about this? And the oath that you expect your elected officials to take. And she said, oh, yeah, the Second Amendment. Folks, they don't know what you know. They don't know what you know. And in a way, we have to think about that when we're having these discussions, because you can't blame them for what they don't know if they've never been taught. It's an opportunity for us to set the record straight for them. They love their country, too. They love their country, too. They just don't know all the information. But it's fully on display. Now, I will tell you this. I think that America remains the last hope for freedom, but I won't tell you that I think that the Republican Party, and I'm a Republican since I'm in first grade, since I know when I became a Republican, it was in first grade. I mean that. But the Republican Party isn't the last hope for America, but the conservative agenda. The conservative agenda, often embodied, but not always embodied by the Republican Party, is the last hope for America and the last hope for freedom around the globe, right? We got to protect that. The Republican Party, I think, too oftentimes doesn't want to go out and do the hard work. Do the hard work. And you've heard me say this before. You've heard some of my friends say this. We make this too complicated, right? This is easy. Tell the people what you're going to do and just go do that. Just go do that, right? But we don't often, unfortunately, we don't often do that. And I will tell you this too. Redistricting. Talk about that a little bit, just a little bit. So I have some friends in Washington, D.C., and they, of course, are watching with different levels of interest. And they say, well, you've been redistricted. What does your new district look like? And they look at the numbers and so on and so forth. And they say, well, you're going to have to change what you do. I said, well, I have a different vision of that. Are you telling me that all the votes that I've made as a state representative and as a member of Congress are wrong? And so that now I should, because I have a different district that looks a little different, I should change all that and all that needs to be disavowed? No, I don't think so, folks. This is my plan. My plan is to go out and meet the new voters that I hope to earn their vote and to talk about the things that I believe in, and to talk about them in a way that they haven't heard and inform them about things that they might not know, and to change that district to look more like the district I'm privileged to represent right now. That's winning this fight. That's winning this argument. That's winning this battle. The conservative agenda is the American agenda. It is the American. It doesn't matter if you're out in the country or in the city. If you talk to people about the things that are important to them, they are the same things that are important to you. They love their country. They are struggling every day to make the better life for themselves and their children, and they want to be able to reach their full potential in America. That's not a Democrat thing or Republican. That's an American thing, and they don't have to. We got to find a way, and there are ways to break these barriers. I know, depending on where you go, if you say, I'm a Republican, people tune out immediately. If you say, well, I'm a conservative, they tune out immediately. We got to recognize that and be able to have a conversation with them and maybe use some different terminology, some different language. That is okay. The current situation is this, and it's a situation that has remained for some time. We are in a culture war. We have been in one for some time now. We got to recognize it. You don't have to like it, but we have to embrace the fact that that's our situation. Those are our circumstances. And it's not just the culture war around the edges of kind conversation around your Thanksgiving table or at the office. This is hand-to-hand combat, and it has been that way for some time. The Republican Party and conservatives in general, we have standards of decorum, right? We believe in those things. There are things that look, I grew up saying yes, sir, and yes, ma'am. You respected your elders regardless of who they were. There are certain things you didn't say and certain things. That's how I grew up, and I'm conservative and a Republican, but I got to understand that not everybody acts that way. This is hand-to-hand combat, and we are in a knife fight. We were in a knife fight with the other side. And while too oftentimes I think we are more concerned about, I'm never going to lower my standards of decorum, not willingly and not wittingly. On occasion, I make a mistake, and probably some of you folks have seen that on TV or what have you. I apologize for those times that has happened. But we got to understand that we're in a knife fight, and the other side is interested in winning at all costs, at any cost, and they will do whatever is necessary, and they're not worried about those things. I'm not saying we lower ourselves to that position, but I am saying that we need to understand the circumstances that we're in. We're in a knife fight, we're in a street fight, and we better get to it or we're going to lose, right? These people walk up to their car, in the parking lot and pull out a bumper jack and put it on their shoulder and say, "You want to throw down?" That's what we're up against. All right. And the country is at stake. Your families are at stake. Our communities are at stake. And so we just have to have that mindset. The way forward, we can't let our adversaries and the adversaries of freedom establish or reestablish beachheads. And I'm going to give you an example. This new method of communication that we have, the social networks and the internet and so on and so forth, and talk radio. For years and years, as I was growing up, there were 3 networks that you watched: NBC, ABC, and CBS. And then somehow CNN came along, but they controlled the narrative. Like, I listened to Walter Cronkite when he said the war in Vietnam is lost. The war in Vietnam. This guy's not a combatant. He's a guy that uses words based on his opinion to shape opinion. He said there are people on the battlefield at that moment winning the war. Now, I'm not saying how that would have turned out, but it is the power of persuasion and the power of information from trusted sources. And we grew up that way, and we learned to form our normative values that way. And then along came CNN, and you see Peter Arnett, right? And they say to Peter Arnett, if the enemy tells you something that you know is going to put American troops in peril, will you let them know? And he says, no, I will not, because we are not a biased reporting organization. You think, but you're from America. You're going to put your own countrymen at peril? For the sake of what? And so that was part of it, right? And over time, things have changed. Now the internet, and you have different platforms. But I will tell you, if you look at what's happening with the sequestering of information, with the embargoing of certain messages, with the monetizing or the demonetizing of certain messages, Prager University, if anybody's familiar, right? Not a radical, just trying to talk about things that are important to almost every single American when they hear them, embargoed and sequestered, right? And what's happening is now there was a challenge over time to ABC, CBS, and NBC and their message, their liberal agenda, their agenda. We used to call them news media or news networks. I don't know about you folks, but news is no longer in my description. It's the media. It's the media, but it's not news. It's propaganda. It's agitprop, if you're familiar with the Soviet Union. That's what it is, right? So these new platforms become available, and conservatives start using them to our advantage, to our country's advantage. And these other things start happening, the monetizing and demonetizing, the sequestering and embargoing. They're trying to get us and to fit us back into the same paradigm of 3 networks where all your information comes from the same place. It's all the same thing. There is no diversity of thought allowed, accepted, agreed upon, right? We have different thoughts, and that's how our country is great. That is when diversity is our strength. When we have different viewpoints, then we all work together in the same direction. That's when diversity is a strength, not when diversity separates us all. But that is what's happening right now, and that is a new beachhead being established right now. While we sit here, is being established right now. And we have people in the room and people across the country that are working on our behalf to change those things, but we have to be aware of these things and be in the fight as well. We have to be aware, and we have to tell our neighbors. So there's social media. There are trusted institutions. Now, some folks might be upset with me with this, but I think I got to be honest with you. I grew up, I'm a law and order and law enforcement guy. When you saw the police car coming down the street, down your block or whatever, you ran to the police, right? To say hi, you love the police. The police are the people that kept you safe. And that's how I bring my kids up. And if you take that to the next level, the FBI goes after criminals, goes after the big criminals, the people that really put our country in peril. And the Department of Justice is blind, right? And just goes after the criminals wherever they have been. The upper levels of the military. I'm a person who has been privileged to serve in uniform for over 30 years. But we got to, thank you. But that's not the point. That's not the point. we have to recognize what has happened over time to these institutions at the upper levels. They have been corrupted. I'm going to tell you, look, I think Jeff Sessions as the Attorney General is an honorable guy. And when we ask him, what about a second special counsel? I'm not a fan of special counsels because they run far afield, and we have seen that. However, when he says it has to be under extraordinary circumstances, James Comey was fired. Who's the next guy? I'm drawing a blank. McCabe was fired. Page and Strzok demoted and removed from their positions. This Orr guy, a justice. These are cataclysmic times. Has anybody ever seen any of these things at the top of this institution? There's a problem, folks. There's a problem here. I will just tell you this, and because I get some heat on websites and constituents and so on and so forth, they write to me and they say, or they call and they say, saw you on Tucker Carlson a couple months back, and you said some things that were concerning to me, but you don't talk anymore about it. What's the deal? What information do you have? I want to let you know something. The information you're receiving from your media, which has you believing certain things based on the information you have, right? You're not the FBI, you're not the Department of Justice, you're counting on them to give you information, is different than the information I'm receiving in the secure compartmentalized information facility known as a SCIF, where you receive classified information. It is different. And I wonder why. I don't understand why, and I don't understand why we're not doing more about it. So when I tell you your institutions, they are under assault, it is a beachhead that the other side has established and is trying to maintain or reestablish. That is one of them. You must be skeptical. You must question. It is okay to question. It is okay to love your country and these institutions that are time-tested and honored, but it is also possible. It is also possible that they could be corrupted. The IRS was corrupted, and it was used as an instrument of federal authority against people like you for your beliefs. Just believe it. Just believe it, because it happened. If you don't think it can happen somewhere else, it has, and it is. We cannot let them continue. Our education system. We're sending our kids to school, and look, that's not supposed to be babysitting, but we must monitor our kids' education. And like you, I lament, I have 2 little girls, and I'm wondering, and we do our best. My wife and I do our best to parent them and to make sure that they understand how, not what to think, but how to think and how to act, and the standards of decorum that are important to our family and our society. But we lament, we worried that someday they're going to go off to college and be reprogrammed. Why are we letting that happen? We understand it, right? We recognize it. We all recognize it, but what are we doing about it? I will tell you this, when the college and the universities, and even the ones that I'm privileged to have attended, come into my office because they want some of your tax dollars, I ask them what they're doing with our children's education. And I ask them very pointed questions about certain individuals, certain curriculums, certain statements that are made. The taxpayers don't want to support political ideologies that are antithetical to freedom and America. We won't support that, and I put them on task on that. I think we all need to do that. The legislatures and the courts, you do your part, right? We vote. We screen candidates. We try and get the best ones. But let's face it, we have fallen short on occasions. And one of those occasions was recently in the courts. And we are now reaping what we have sown. Look, we all get it in the room, right? When Democrats are in charge during redistricting, Republicans are going to be unhappy. When Republicans are in charge, Democrats are going to be unhappy. But there are a set of rules. They are enumerated here in this Constitution, and they are enumerated in the Pennsylvania Constitution, and each one of the people in the legislature and in the courts raised their right hand and pledged an oath to uphold and defend those constitutions. It has not happened. It has not happened. The courts just disregarded the rules, this map that we're going to currently work under. And look, I have a privilege to run and earn the vote in any place that they draw it. That's not my position. It's not my place to draw the districts. Our place is to run and earn the vote. But it is the place of the legislature to draw the districts, not the courts. And I remind everybody, thank you, that the maps that we're currently working under were voted on and voted for by Republicans and Democrats. It is a process. If we're going to let the courts decide to do legislation, then with all due respect, I'm not sure why we need a legislature, and I don't think we want the courts doing that. And if they can do that with this, just ask yourself what else they're not going to do it with. It is time. It is long past time, as the Federalist Papers would say, that the separate branches guard jealously their authority and their power. It is time. It is long past time. It needs to happen. So we cannot let the liberals establish and reestablish beachheads, and that's an establishment of a new beachhead, and you all know it. They could not win at the ballot box. They cannot win with their ideas. They are antithetical to freedom. But they decided to take a different course and win in the courts, and that's what they did to change the paradigm. Let's talk about revising history. We have to speak up. People come to my office all the time. My chief of staff is somewhere in here, and oh, there she is. There's Lauren, if you don't know her, my chief of staff. We will tell you that we tell people almost to a person, whether you agree with Perry or you disagree with Perry, this is America. You must be heard. And so I'll take you just back to a couple. I remember when I was sitting on the House floor, privileged to be on the House floor in the Pennsylvania House, and we have long discussions on the House floor. And what happens is that one side gets up and starts railing about something, and then the other side gets up, and then it lasts forever, because as soon as this one stands up, then the next one stands up, right? And I remember at the time, the leader, who was my friend Mike Turzai, he would come he would come marching up the aisle to me, and he would just say, "Don't stand up, just stay there." And I say, "But Mike, you would say the narrative's important. The narrative is important. We can't just let them define what the narrative is, because if we don't respond, that becomes the truth." And so I fast forward myself. I'm in the Foreign Affairs Committee in DC, and I got the whole other side railing against the president about Russia. It's Russia this and collusion that and Russia, Russia, Russia. And I say to the chairman, I say, "Mr. Chairman, I got 5 minutes." I say, I've got to correct the record here. I have to correct the record. He goes, "Just don't worry about that. America understands that the Democrat Party and the liberals have always been aligned with the Russians, the Soviets, the communists, the socialists." And I say, I don't know if they do understand it. I don't know if they do. Maybe they do, but I can't let it go. So I spent my 5 minutes, instead of asking the questions of the witnesses that I wanted to ask, I spent my 5 minutes correcting the record that Russian involvement in the American government and the American experience and our ideals has started in 1917 with the Bolshevik Revolution. That's when it started. And then I reminded everybody that it was Harry Hopkins, a known communist operative, fellow traveler, worked in the White House with FDR, that it was John Service that went to China under Treasury's banner and changed America's support from Chiang Kai-shek to Mao Zedong, that it was Alger Hiss at Yalta negotiating where we went in, whether it was the Balkans or whether it was France, that allowed Russia to put down the Iron Curtain all over Eastern Europe. It was the Democrats. It was the Democrats that stopped the investigation that a great senator from Wisconsin did on Russian and communist involvement into our country's highest levels. It's important to let everybody know, because people don't know. People don't know that the Democrats Party was the one that supported slavery. It's important for people to know that the first black representatives in Congress were Republicans. It's important to know that Frederick Douglass said he would never be anything but a Republican, a man who taught himself to read and write, wrote his own books, and chose which party he wanted to be. And it's important for people to know that the KKK is a wing of the Democrat Party, and the Democrat Party is the one that opposed the civil rights movement in the 60s. They don't know it, folks. If you aren't heard, no one's going to hear it. You have to be heard. We have to be heard. We cannot let them establish these beachheads. Now, with that, we have to have measured responses, because a lot of this it's hard for people to hear. They can't believe it. It's so sensational to them because they've never heard it before. They are no longer hearing it in school. They're no longer hearing it in college. They're not hearing it around the dinner table. So we have to be measured in how we communicate with people. We got to bring them to this somewhat slowly, and sometimes we have to be satisfied with realistic gains. And like you, I am impatient. I've watched the destruction of my country happen for almost my whole life, and things that I think were wrong. And I think we have to turn it around immediately. I sense your urgency, and I have the same urgency. But we got to remember, folks that don't come to the leadership conference, they don't know these things. They're not like us. They're not like you. And so you got to give it to them in bite-sized chunks that they can understand. I think it's important that we do what we're expected to do based on what we said we were going to do in the campaign. If I told people that I'm going to vote to repeal Obamacare, the ACA, because of multiple reasons, I have to be willing to do that. I have to be willing to do that. I can't say, well, I was going to do it when President Obama was the president. He wasn't going to sign it, but now we have President Trump and he's going to sign it. Now I'm not going to do it because it's going to throw, there's a million reasons you can rationalize. People aren't looking for that. I think whether they agree or disagree with their statesmen, with their elected officials, it's important for them to respect their positions based on the fidelity of what they've told them. And if I tell you I'm going to do something, and as a party, if we say we're going to do something, then we're duty bound to do it. And I think that, like I said, not everybody's going to agree, but we can respect one another, and I think they can respect their elected officials where they do those things. I think we have to go where we're unexpected, right? We traditionally go where we feel comfortable. We got to get ourselves out of our comfort zone and go places where we normally don't go, and have the conversation with people, because they're at heart, they are just like us. Chances are they've never heard it, right? If we just keep talking to each other, how do we bring anybody else in, right? We already got it here. We got to go out there. And that means us. That means me in particular. I asked for this job, but it doesn't preclude any of you. And it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable. I get it. But our country's worth it. Our communities, our neighborhoods, they are worth it. These are our neighbors. We got to be positive, right? Sometimes I think I get this. I don't tell many jokes. I love to tell jokes. I just can't remember any, and I can never get the punchline, right? So I don't tell many jokes. But we're serious people, right? And sometimes I think that overwhelms people. We got to be welcoming people, and we have to be understanding of their circumstances. I will tell you this, people that talk to me, if I go to places where I'm unexpected, when they hear that I came from a broken home, that I started working on 13, partially because I didn't want to hear my mother and my stepfather fighting, and because I was embarrassed and ashamed to be on assistance. I was embarrassed and ashamed to be on assistance. And they look at me, and they're like, red tie, blue suit, white shirt. You were on assistance? I was on assistance. Yeah, I'm not too far from you. You can get out of this yoke that you're carrying. You can be what you want to be in America, and we're not that far apart, right? We're not that far apart. We love our country. We're not that far apart. So we got to be informative, welcoming, and engaging. We got to tell them we love them. We're here because we love you, and we want you to have the same opportunities that everybody else does. I will tell you this, folks, and I don't know, I don't want to overspend my time here. I'm going to wrap it up here. Okay, so the U.S. military, I don't know whether you know this or not, the U.S. military plans, and we're not going to get into anything operational, but through the course of my lifetime in the military, plans to fight outnumbered and win. That's how we do our work. We plan to fight out. That's you folks, right? We got to plan to fight outnumbered and win. That is our duties. We don't have George Soros. We don't have Tom Steyer, which, by the way, just announced he's going to spend a few $1 million in Pennsylvania and in the race that I'm in too, just to let you know. We don't have those folks. We don't have George Clooney. Quite honestly, I'm kind of happy about that. But we don't have the seemingly unlimited financial resources as the liberals, but we've got each other. We've got each other. Now, we have to be motivated. Texas, Republicans turned out more than ever. The Democrats did too. They sense something. And I think what they sense is false, but they sense something, and they are motivated. We have to be motivated. We have got to be excited. We have got to be energized. This is not the end. The election of the president is not the end. It is the beginning of the fight to take back the things that have been stripped away from our country and our community. Like I said, we love our neighbors no matter who they are, no matter where they live, no matter what they love. They are our neighbors. They are our friends. They have troubles in their life just like we do. We want the best for their family and our family. We live next to each other. What's good for their family is good for our family. We love our country, our Constitution, our freedom, and all those things are worth fighting for. I hope you're not too tired to keep fighting for these things. God bless you. Thanks for your attendance today.